for our What in the World segment. The Central Committee of China's Communist Party made a decision this week that will change the course of that country and perhaps the world. After 4 days of intense meetings, Beijing announced that it would end its one-child policy, which forbade many Chinese couples from having multiple children. From now on, all couples in China will be allowed to have 2 children. This was an admission that China's greatest obstacle to continued economic growth in the long run was its demographics. It was going to have too few young workers and too many old retirees. As the cliche has it, China would grow old before it grew rich. This new policy aims to change the country's fate. I remember when the policy was adopted in the late 1970s. I was growing up in India, and people there were envious of China's ability to enforce family planning. India, by contrast, was chaotic and dysfunctional. Its incentives for smaller families didn't seem to do much to keep family sizes down. The mentality that produced China and India's family planning policies was understandable. Poor countries have little money and many mouths to feed. In that context, when couples had 6 or 8 or 10 children, they were destined to stay poor. But the policies and the theories behind them turned out to be wrong. In 1968, the Stanford biologist Paul Ehrlich wrote a book titled The Population Bomb. It became a huge bestseller as he warned that we simply did not have the resources for the number of people on the planet. Today, the Earth's population is twice what it was in 1968, the New York Times has noted, and yet we have found innovative ways not just to survive, but prosper. However, the idea persists that our big problem is too many people. As Ruchir Sharma recently noted in the Wall Street Journal, the United Nations says we will add over 2 billion people to the world's population in the next 35 years, implying an unmanageable strain on our resources. But Sharma says the problem might well be the reverse, because as countries develop, their birth rates plunge. World population growth, which has averaged nearly 2% per year for decades, is now about 1%. In 83 countries, comprising nearly half the global population, women are averaging less than 2 children, Sharma notes, which means that couples are not replacing themselves. Even in a poor country like India, the fertility rate has plummeted. Couples used to have more than 6 children on average in 1960, Sharma points out. Now the average is less than 3. The real problem the rich world faces acutely, particularly Europe, is a population implosion. Only the countries that adapt early to the population implosion will thrive in the baby bust era, writes Sharma. He predicts that countries will only be able to thrive economically if they become friendly to immigrants or convince their people to have more babies, which is of course much harder. China's technocrats have carefully studied the data, and they are trying to adjust to the new realities out there. Now, will Western politicians follow suit? Next on GPS, the 2016